What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Made You a Mixtape podcast. Really special show today. We have none other than Tommy Tallarico on the show, musician, composer, and CEO of Intellivision. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
I'm not going to lie. I am geeking out because Intellivision was the second gaming system that I had growing up. First, it was the Commodore VIC-20.
Oh, yeah, the VIC-20. Nice.
Right. And then it was the Intellivision. And I remember being told get lost by the dealer whenever trying to bet too much in poker and blackjack.
The shifty-eyed dealer. Yeah.
Right. Right. It was the only way to play video game baseball because of the controller.
You're out.
Right. And still trying to figure out Mazatron. I had it. I wasn't
a fan of that one.
I mean, cool. It was cool. It was Tron, but it was hard to figure out.
Tron Deadly Discs was the much better game, though.
Admittedly,
that was a great game.
I do wish I had that one. Yeah. But
Mazatron was tough to figure out.
Intellivision's got the Amico coming out now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so amico is the Italian word for friend. I'm 100% Italian, born in the U.S., but 4 grandparents migrated from Italy in the early 1900s. So yeah, the whole concept behind amico is I kind of saw this huge gaping hole in the video game industry, which is, and I'm a gamer, I'm a hardcore gamer, but like I can't play games with my mom and dad anymore. My wife doesn't really, and she grew up playing video games, but she's not interested in the PlayStation, the Xbox, and the Switch. The controls are just too complicated, for an average non-gamer, or when you think about people who play mobile devices, that's 3.1 billion people play mobile, but 200 million people play consoles, right? So people don't realize, like, wow. And then you start to talk to those 3 billion people and you say, what is it that you like about mobile that you don't like about home consoles? And of course, there's the convenience of this being in your pocket. I mean, that's a big deal about it, right? But what you find is when you dig deep, the controllers on all the home consoles, dual analog sticks, like you've lost my dad right away, and what's considered casual in the home console market is not considered casual to the hyper casual or non-gamers, right? Because most people, the 3 billion people who play their phone, they don't call themselves gamers. They play an hour a day or 20 minutes a day. I mean, but they certainly don't classify themselves as that. And so again, a game like Overcooked, which I love, amazing game, amazing developers, right? And to me, it's like, oh, this is a casual co-op game for the Switch or PlayStation, whatever. But my wife will sit down and play that, or my mom, like that's not casual to them. That's like, well, I have to do 2 sticks and then I'm under a time limit and
crazy button combos and the like.
Cook and clean in real life. Why would I want to do the dishes and clean in a video game? So it's like, oh, wow. But, and then of course you have this, which is the total opposite for the most part, which is, pop 3 or, match 3, pop bubble games and this and that. Again, hyper casual. All of the edutainment for kids is now on mobile. And so we're kind of that gap between mobile hyper casual and like where the Switch is, right? Because I think everyone would agree that like, mobile here, Switch, in regards to like complexity. Now there's a lot of great complex games on the mobile. I don't want to paint it, you can play Fortnite and Among Us and stuff, from mobile, right? But I mean, in general, if you take a look at the entire library, it's mobile, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, and then maybe a little bit above that PC, right? We got to shout out to our master race, and the PC master race. But the problem with mobile is that none of those games, I don't want to say none of them, there's 1 or 2 out of the millions that are available. Most of the games, overwhelming majority, they're just people staring into their mobile device, right? Mm-hmm. There's no couch co-op going on. Again, there's a few exceptions like Jackbox, Space Team, Emoji Charades. There's a couple of exceptions, but it's 0.1%. I mean, there's, a million new games that come out every year across iOS and Android, or some crazy number,
and various versions of all of them.
Right. And then of course, so the quality control is non-existent, right? So there's no curation on mobile. And let's be honest, folks, everything is a cash grab on mobile, right? And if they're not, they literally design the games and create the AI around getting you to spend money, right? And if you're not spending money with them, then you're going to get a 30-second ad every 3 minutes or whatever, so they're going to get you some way, right? So that's and this isn't great as like its own controller by itself, because it's the screen and the controller. And, again, if you want to have a match game or whatever, but try playing a platformer, side-scrolling platformer on this, or even a shooter is a little better, but still. And so that's kind of what Amico is that, it's our 4 pillars are simple, affordable, family, and entertainment. And those 4 words spell out safe. So let me explain that really quick. We don't allow violent content, teen rated content, sexual content, bad language, everything. Now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be like, oh, kiddie, saccharine, you want to poke your eyes out. No, it just means that, like sports games for the most part are rated E. In fact, like 80% of all video games are actually rated E. Every Nintendo game that you've ever loved, from Mario to Zelda to Pikmin to whatever, those are all E games, right? So again, so we don't allow that violent content on the machine. All of our games are $9.99 or less digitally, and the physical versions are $19.99. And everything has a single player and a cooperative mode. For the most part, the overwhelming majority have either single player and co-op together, right? So you don't have to search, oh, what game is going to be co-op? How about all of them? Every single one. You don't have to search for them, because everyone has some kind of versus or co-op or multiplayer mode in there. And again, couch co-op, the machine, it comes with 2 controllers, and the controllers are, that's the first video game machine in 30 years since the Super Nintendo in 1990 that has come with 2 full controllers. People say, well, the Switch, no, it's one controller you can break into 2, but the cool thing is that you have a color capacitive touchscreen, a speaker, a microphone, a gyroscope, and an accelerometer. You see the little lanyard there for wrapping it around. Wireless contact charging right there, really ergonomical, easy, big buttons, and LED lights and force feedback, and the buttons light up. And again, you can see I can kind of show you there. You can see the ball moving around there. The woohoo, where is it?
Oh, that's awesome.
There it is there. And then you have, again, touch screen. And then the disc, which is, it spins in its 64 positions. But also, if you push it down harder, you can see that green thing at the bottom. It's touch sensitive as well. So the harder you push. So if you want to go a little bit faster, you just push a little bit harder on the disc and it recognizes that. So it's a very easy to pick up and play controller. Anyone can pick up and play it. And all of our games are simple and easy. If you can't explain the rules in like 10 seconds, then it's not for us, right? And we're not trying to compare with Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo with all their amazing graphics and all the technology and stuff. We're staying in our lane, And the other cool thing, though, is not only does it come with 2 controllers, but you can download an app for free and you can hook up to 8 mobile devices to it as well.
Wow.
And again, the mobile devices don't work great for platform games, but for the party games, card games, dice games, imagine for the first time you can actually play poker and have your cards all hidden from everybody else, right? Our dice games are really fun because, you know, when it's your turn, you can shake the controller and the dice shakes and it force feedbacks and you can hear it clicking.
I think about like football and having your plays like all set out for you. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And the dice, when you're ready, you just throw them up on screen and the dice appear rolling out on the screen and stuff.
Of which I'm glad you have the wristband for that too, because I can just see controllers or consoles flying.
So that's our kind of differentiating factor is that simple, affordable family entertainment, couch co-op, bring it back. I want grandma to be able to play their 5-year-old granddaughter and the hardcore gamer, and grandma should win. You know, so like all the games, no matter what your skill level, you can pick it up and play.
And the nice thing too is, like you said, couch co-op. You know, I mean, you see so often it's like, you know, kids will be like, okay, I'm just gonna go to my room and play this game.
That's multiplayer gaming.
Exactly. I was gonna put my headphones on. With
their headphones on.
Exactly. No, like get back on the couch, play together.
So tell me this. Let me see if you were like me and what I've found. And we've done a lot of market research on this, right? But do you remember? Think about your entire life, your fondest gaming memories and experiences. What I always find is that the moments that you remember the most and have the fondest feelings were when you were playing with other people. Right? Maybe it was Mario Kart on Super Nintendo or Bomberman on the Saturn or whatever, you know, anything, right?
I remember sleepovers. I remember sleepovers at a friend's place, and he had the old NES, and I think we stayed up pretty much through the night trying to make our way from, you know, World 1.1 to, you know, to World 8.4 in one night. But it was just one of those things where, because we were playing together, it's like, okay, we can do this. We can make our way through. I mean, and it even goes back to board games. Like just the concept of sitting together and playing a game, like all as one. Like I miss Monopoly days, you know.
And we have a lot of great board games on here as well too. Like award-winning games like Telestrations is a perfect example where you can draw on the screen and then it shifts your picture over to the next player and then they have to guess what it is you draw, and everybody up to 8 players can do that. And so the picture goes around the room. And so by the time it gets back to you, you're like, what the hell? Why is this a giraffe? The word was dog, you know, but it changes all along the way as it gets back to you. And then it reveals it on the screen for everybody. So it's these kind of things, or a game like Blank Slate, where, you know, you have one part of a word like blank house. And everybody says, okay, well, you know, and you a firehouse, you know, brick house, you know, firehouse, whatever it is. And then you match those words all at the same time. So yeah, tons of party games, but we also have a lot of retro reimagined as well. So I went out and I got all the licenses from Atari, all the best games, Missile Command, Asteroids, Breakout, Tempest, you know, Pong, and we're reimagining them all and putting them into multiplayer co-op as well. So imagine a game like Missile Command, except now new coat of paint, new amazing audio, and the way you control the reticle, because using an analog stick to control something like that, or a D-pad is always awful, right? You needed that roller ball. But now with the screen, the whole screen, wherever you move your thumb, that's where the reticle on the screen is. You never look down. It's something that's so natural. It's like using a mouse for the first time. But imagine 8 people playing, all trying to defend the cities, right? And you can also do a versus mode up to 4 players where you're the one sending missiles at each other. So you're trying to defend your own base while you're sending out stuff to the other 3 players, up to 4 players. You can play 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 2-on-1, whatever. So yeah, and then of course we have educational titles as well for the families, right? When you think about like Roblox and Minecraft, kids are getting on that like 7, 8 years old, but there's really nothing, below that's not on mobile. And the problem with mobile, you look at the research, and parents say, their number one concern is that they give their kids too much alone screen time, right? Because again, that couch co-op is not the norm anymore. When we were growing up, right, it was the only way to play. You couldn't play Major League Baseball on Intellivision if you didn't have somebody else. You couldn't play a single player, NHL hockey, those were great games. Couldn't play it. Utopia, another great one. Couldn't play it if you didn't have another person. And then when the internet snuck into the industry, in the late 90s, multiplayer started to become a different thing. MMOs, massively multiplayer online, the greats like, League of Legends and Warcraft and Dota and EverQuest, those kind of things, really started. I mean, Warcraft and EverQuest were first, of course, and then later on Dota and League of Legends. But you can see where the industry really started to shift, and people started abandoning. And by the way, again, if you wanted to play a 4-player game on the PlayStation, you're going to need 3 extra controllers, which are going to cost you anywhere from $50 to $80, depending on if you want to get the official ones or not, or you get a sale or whatever. And then the games, I mean, look at the PlayStation 5. And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to bag. I love PlayStation. I love them all. I love Microsoft, Nintendo, PlayStation for different reasons. So I don't want to feel like I'm coming across as negative, because I don't. I love them all. But when you look at PlayStation 5, for example, like all the games are, coming, all the new games are going to be $70. And there's not a single one of those games I could play with my dad or my wife or my mom, So you think about it, and the Wii came out 15 years ago. My mom bought a Wii. She's 80 years old now. She bought a Wii when she was 65. She never bought a video game in her whole life, right? But it was simple, easy. She could do the Wii bowling. She got it, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of, just if you could compare us to something, I would say this is the Wii 15 years later, except our focus is on hyper casual, family, co-op, easy gaming. And we have some hardcore gamer games in there as well. Don't get me wrong. But the majority, the focus is on bringing people together.
And what I like too, from some of the gameplay trailers that you guys have put out, the graphics, although reimagined, the character animations are still the same. And there was something about those in television, like the people running,
the running man. Yeah.
Exactly. There was just something iconic about that. You mentioned sound design for the games. Of course, you are well known in the industry for doing a lot of music composing, a lot of sound design. Yeah. How important is that going to be to the Amico experience?
Well, I always, we joke around the office. We always say, I don't know if any of these games are going to, be fun to play, but they're definitely going to sound great. So but yeah, I mean, to me, it's my second nature, right? It's or my first nature, some would say. It's what I've done for 32 years is make audio for video games. And so, yeah, I'm personally audio directing every single game. We have 50 games in development right now. We want to launch with about 35 games. That's our target. Our launch is in October 10th. And so it's so important. I mean, and again, if you watch some of our trailers and listen to them, like check out Missile Command or Astro Smash trailer that we released, and you can just hear the music and what it brings to it, and the sound design and what it brings to it. And again, especially for like retro style games, because people are used to hearing boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, you know. And so when you hear Missile Command or Astro Smash with like a full orchestra and like, you know, amazing, you know, cinematic sound design, you're kind of like, oh my God, like this is, you know, the joke among video game artists, and again, I've been in the industry 32 years now, and they'll all tell you the same exact thing. Any video game artist will tell you, man, the second they put the audio in, the art looks better. You know?
Well, it's like any movie. You take the soundtrack out and all of a sudden it's just, you know.
Yeah, it's like, this sucks. Yeah.
Can you imagine Star Wars without that score?
No, I cannot. It would be like a boring independent European film or something. You know, like it would not have the pizzazz.
Now, you said yourself, you're designing all the sound and the music for all of these games. Mm-hmm. What goes through your mind when you're looking at a game saying, how am I going to score this?
So for me, the way I've always worked, and again, you know, I'm not a classically trained, I didn't go to school and get degrees about music. I'm more of like the Eddie Van Halen style, which is pick up a guitar and play, just like yesterday, gonna get on my knees and pray. But no, just listening to other musicians, that's always how I've, you know, and I grew up in a musical family. You know, my cousin is Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. His real name is Tommy Tallarico. So I would go, imagine if you're 7, 8 years old, going to the Boston Garden or the, you know, and watching cousins. To me, it was cousin Steven. And, you know, they sit the family on the side of the stage and again, imagine seeing your cousin perform in front of 30,000 people and everybody losing their mind and girls crying in the aisles. And it's like, oh yeah, that looks like a cool job. That's what I want to do. You know, like there was no, oh my God, that's an impossible dream. No one can ever, oh, he's so lucky. Like none of that ever entered my head, even as a young child. And so music was always around. And so I started playing piano when I was 3. I picked up guitar when I was 5. And it's always to impress your parents, right? I always found that for me in my early formative years, I was always doing something because I wanted, you know, like, so my parents were a product of the 50s and, you know, they listened to Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis. And so when I was 3, my mom told me this, and we have some video of it, but I would play Great Balls of Fire on the piano or Jailhouse Rock, you know, and for a 3 or 4-year-old kid to do this, I was getting all the attention in the world. And then of course, you know, my mom would call the neighbors over. Oh, look at what Tommy can do. You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. You know, and then when I was 5, I remember seeing Godfather for the first time. And then again, I'm 100% Italian. All 4 of my grandparents came off the boat. And so when you're an Italian, Italian-American, and you see Godfather, you know, that kind of, and even though it's kind of a violent movie about the mafia, but there's also a lot of family and passion and other things that Italians relate to a lot, you know, whether it's angry, shouting temper. It's funny when my wife first met my family and we left, she's like, kind of like, I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, how come you guys yell at each other all the time? I'm like, no, that's just how we communicate. That's how Italians can. Oh, really? She's a polite Canadian, you know, very kind of reserved, mellow. I'm like the loudmouth East Coast Italian. So, you know, opposites attract, they say. But, and so when I saw Godfather, and again, I really didn't understand the movie really too much, but I heard the music. And so that's why I picked up guitar, because I wanted to, you know, a great mandolin part. And I wanted to impress my dad because he would go around the house humming it all the time. So, yeah. And then I remember seeing Star Wars. You know, I was born in 1968. So so all along this time, so I'm watching Cousin Steven perform to 30,000 people when I'm 8 years old, right? 1976, 1977. And then Rocky comes out in again, being an Italian, East Coast, Rocky, Philadelphia, never give up, always go for your dream, no matter how hard they hit you down, get back up. To me, that's like the American, story. And it runs through my DNA every day. And then that music from Bill Conti, dun, 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 oh my God, that got me into orchestral music. And then that was 76. And then 77, Star Wars comes out. Imagine being a child in the late 70s while this stuff.
So many good soundtracks then.
And then Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1980. And then Tron in 82. It's like it just didn't, E.T. and Superman. It just didn't stop. Growing up in the late 70s, early mid 80s is just unbelievable, right? And everybody thinks their generation grew up in the best times. Like my mom says, we grew up in the 50s. Screw all you. We had the best shit, and she's probably right. But yeah. So anyway, and then video games are coming out, and then Intellivision hits in 1979, and Atari in 1977, and Space Invaders and Asteroids are coming out for the first time when you're that age. I mean, come on, folks. Like this was a great time to grow up, and all that stuff had a big, obviously had a big influence on me. So, it's all based around passion, and these are the things I'm passionate about.
So how do you go from playing Great Balls of Fire, to everyone in the neighborhood, to composing and sound designing video games?
So what I do, what I do, like I said, I'm not classically trained. I don't know how to read music. I hire people who do when I do my orchestrations and arrangements for my video game concert with a symphony. Like I just hire people that are way smarter than me to make it sound great. But so I play by ear. And so when I sit down and see a game for the first time, I just imagine what the score should sound like. I just wait for it to show up in my head. That's what I do. I play the game and I just wait. And sometimes it comes right away. Sometimes it takes a little while. But sometimes you'll have an idea and you're like, it's pretty mediocre or average. That sucks. Let me just throw it out. Let me come up with something. So you just start imagining. That's how I do it. I imagine, if this sounded the most incredible thing, what would it sound like? And then I memorize that. Once I got it, I run over to my piano and I start figuring out the notes. What am I hearing in my head? And then once I have that, then you start to lay it down in the computer and start to bring in a drum beat, or if it's a guitar song, you start with guitar, or if it's a orchestral song, you might start with the strings or the brass or whatever. So yeah, but again, how did I learn how to write music for orchestra? By listening to Beethoven and John Williams. John Williams is the guy who composed E.T. and Star Wars and Raiders and Superman and all the greats. Gilligan's Island. A lot of people don't know that. He did Gilligan's Island.
I did not know that, actually.
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, see, he was Johnny Williams back then. And that was like one of his first gigs in Hollywood, was the theme to Gilligan's Island.
Oh, wow. So do you remember the first time you played a game and you got personally lost in the soundtrack? Yeah,
I mean, I remember thinking, I remember hearing, like when we played Pac-Man for the first time, me and my dad, that was the first time I remember like being like thinking about it. Oh, wow. Right. Or boom. And which was cool is later in my career, which was going back probably about 20 years ago, I actually had a chance to work on the Pac-Man franchise, a couple of different games. And so I redid that song, but in a big band swing. It was so cool. And then I also did like a techno remake. And then I hired my good friend Dweezil Zappa, and we did like a guitar thrashing rock version of the Pac-Man stuff. So I had some fun with that years later. But in regards to like getting lost, like you're just like, boom, I can remember, I think to me, and I still think it's one of the best soundtracks, from beginning to end, because of how it incorporates into the game and the feelings you feel. I remember Super Mario World. Everyone says, "Oh, Mario Brothers, is the easy one." But for me, it was like Mario Brothers was cool and amazing, but like really going like, holy moly, like this is great music for me. This Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, and then of course, I think Final Fantasy VIII by Nobuo Uematsu. That opening Libere Fatale and that opening cinematic, that's when it just took it even to a whole different level, for sure. So yeah, those would be my two. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to mention any of my own, but but there was one when I did the Terminator on Sega CD, and I was doing all that rock and guitar music, and people were hearing guitar and bass and drums, real guitar, bass, and drums in a video game for the first time. That was kind of like a shocking moment to a lot of people, and some people didn't like it. They're like, "Yeah, this doesn't sound like a video game. Where's the bleeps and bloops?"
And you mentioned the bleeps and bloops. If you're just playing, you think about the Intellivision, the Amico coming out, and how it's very much like there's the retro to today. Which do you prefer to hear? Classic 8-bit soundtracks or like full on orchestra?
That is a great question, and one that always gets me in trouble, because I always answer it. I always answer it honestly. So for me, I'm going to answer it in two ways, because I don't want to, because it needs to be answered a little complex. To me, I much prefer modern video game music, Halo, Kingdom Hearts, God of War, Uncharted, The Last of Us. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all of the amazing, scores that are out there, everything from Journey to Skyrim. I mean, those are powerful. Those are amazing. But I will say this is that, there's a lot more video games out right now, and everybody feels like, whatever they grew up with is the best. So a lot of people will say, yeah, but back in the day, you had Zelda, Mario, Tetris, Mega Man, Metroid, Castlevania. Like, Tommy, are you crazy? That music is way better. And to an extent, the melodies, because Sonic the Hedgehog, because we were limited to what we did, we had to make the melody and the motifs, as it's often called, we had to make those great, because you only had 30, 40, 50 seconds before the song looped, and it better be catchy. And so it forced us to come up with something amazing. A lot of young composers these days, and I say this all the time, when I talk at universities and stuff, is that people get caught up with the production value these days, right? And they spend more time mixing or engineering or arranging or recording or setting up microphones than they do actually writing the song, right? So pretend you didn't have any of that. Pretend like you're making video games in the late 80s, right? And focus on those motifs and melodies. And the other thing I'll just say about that is, because I love all those old school things, but what people don't remember is that although we remember the greats, lest us not forget that a lot of video game music back then, the majority was crap. We just don't remember that stuff. So we only remember the best, But I think overall, modern video game music is more enjoyable personally to me, although I think the greatest video game music of all time ever written was written in the 80s and 90s. So there you go.
One thing that I find fascinating, and just kind of going through your biography, is how much, help you do for others in the industry. And I bring up the Game Audio Network Guild. It seems that a lot of your career, aside from like doing so many amazing things, has been to help others kind of reach their own dreams and their own like pinnacle of achievements there. What drives that for you?
So for me, there's a couple of things. I came from nothing, and my 4 grandparents, when they came over to America, like I say, on the boat through Ellis Island, the typical Italian immigrant story, they couldn't even speak the language, and for them to like make that journey and leave everything they knew and everything that they, their families, their language, their culture, everything, just for this opportunity, right? That's why they did it. They did it for the opportunity. And, so I always think of that. And my grandparents would always tell me growing up, never take anything of this for granted. Like, we sacrificed our lives to make a better life for you and generations to come, and that was something that always, and they weren't saying that like to be like trying to make me feel guilty, like you better do this, don't squander. No, it was just, they wanted me to be aware of the struggles that they went through in order for us. And if they can get from point A to point B, then I can certainly get from point B, where they left off, to point C, D, and E, right? And so it's very inspirational to me. And I'm just a big believer in the more positivity and the more things you put out. I'm a very positive mental thinker. I'm very much into, if anyone's ever read the book or seen the documentary, and if you haven't, please do, because it will change your life. But the book, The Secret, you can get on Netflix or YouTube for free. Just spend an hour of your life, watch The Secret, and your life will change if you follow and believe what's in there. And it's not a religion. It's not some weird, wacky, thing like, Dianetics or whatever, Scientology or whatever. It's not, it's just believing in yourself, believing and having a positive mental attitude, never wishing harm on yourself, always thinking that you can get to the top of that mountain. You believe it. And if you can believe it, you will achieve it. Right. And that's the secret of success. And that's why they call it The Secret. And I can tell you, every single successful person I've ever known, and I don't gauge success just by money. Success is happiness. Success is not having stress. Success is having a smile on your face every day. You don't need $10 million to put a smile on your face. It helps, but you don't, but you certainly don't need it. And in fact, I know more people with money that are unhappy than I know people with nothing that are more happy. So again, money doesn't mean it, but to have true success, and the more you give out, the more you get back. It's as simple as that. So I do those things because I think of my grandparents, and maybe I'm helping somebody who would have been my grandparent when they were a teenager or when they were 20 years old. Maybe I'm passing on what they passed on to me. And again, I'm just a big believer that whatever you put out in the universe, you're going to get back. If you spew hatred and negativity, that's what you're going to get back. That's going to be your life. That's what you're going to attract. They call it the law of attraction, right? You attract whatever you're putting out, whatever vibe you're putting out, that's what you're going to attract back to you. And so if you put out positivity, if you put out helping and being kind and all that stuff, that's what will come back to you. So that's just what I believe. And it's done me well for the 53 years on this planet.
Speaking of putting things out, obviously you started the Video Games Live tour. Mm-hmm. how much do you miss being on tour with the pandemic going on, and just the experience of taking those song compositions and bringing them to the live audience?
Well, to answer your first question, so, I started Video Games Live 20 years ago, right? And we hold the Guinness World Record for the most symphony shows ever performed live by a touring symphony, over 550 performances. I would do about 40, 50 shows a year all over the world. And so I was gone 250 days a year, right? So 2/3 of my life was on the road in hotel rooms, and I did that for decades. So when the pandemic hit, and first when I started, when I became a CEO of Intellivision and started this new rebranding of Intellivision, I had started cutting back the concerts to like once a month. So I was already starting to kind of wean off it, and because I'm like, well, I can't be on the road. I got to run a company. We have 55 employees all over the world. We have 4 offices, 15,000 square foot buildings. I mean, and then when the pandemic hit, it just went from 50 shows a year, and then I had it down to like 12 or 15 a year, and then when COVID hit, it's like 0. And so I think I'm a big believer. I think all things happen for a reason, and not going out on one weekend a month allowed me to focus even more time on, because I'm a confirmed workaholic, but I don't consider it work. It's what I enjoy doing, right? I have an addiction to the adrenaline that flows through my body from 4 o'clock in the morning when I wake up every day till midnight when I go to sleep every day, 7 days a week. And of course I love spending time with my wife and my dogs and nature. You have to balance it, but again, I'm just, this is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. And that was, again, something that my grandfather told me, that he said, look, the secret of life is do something that you love, because it'll never be considered work. You'll never feel like you worked a day in your life if you can do something. And that's how I feel. I don't consider this a job. I don't consider, touring and performing to 10,000 screaming fans on stage a job. That's just a dream. That's like a living dream, and it's funny because I'm considered a super sleeper, which like 1% to 2% of the population has this. And it's when, most people, they go into 3 different stages of sleep. When you first nod off, it takes you a couple of hours, and then you go into REM, and then you go into a deep sleep. And when you're in your deep sleep, that's when your brain and your body is, regenerating itself. And so what happens when you're a super sleeper is you skip those first 2 states. So I don't dream. Like, it's very, very, very rare that I ever dream. And my joke is always say, why do I need to dream? I just wake up and this is my dream. I dream every day of my life is a perfect dream for me, And so I go boom, right into that 4 hours, and then I snap up. I'm never groggy when I wake up. So when it's time to wake up, boom, I wake up and I'm 100% up. I don't need coffee. I've never done drugs. I've never tried alcohol. I've never tried cigarettes. I've never tried coffee. I'm up, and it's like, rock on. Let's hit it. We're going to make some history today, yeah. So I forget what the question was at this point. I went off on a tangent,
but yeah, putting the
you did too. So yeah, I was talking
exactly,
so much. Yeah. You can't get an Italian talking, man. Well, I'll talk your ear off.
That's because I haven't had the coffee yet. Okay, so skipping to a bit more personal questions here. I always find
Video Games Live. That was the question. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Video Games Live. Yes, I enjoy the time away from the road because I was on it for so long. But we are going to be getting out there. We actually have a show in Texas next month, the only show in 2021. Texas decided they're going to do this whole social distancing thing. And it's like a 3,000 seat venue, and they're going to sell every third seat. And, everybody's going to wear masks, and they want to, Texas wants to, try to start getting back some kind of normalcy, and they're being super careful about it. And we're honored to be, one of the first shows that they're doing. So we're doing that. We're going to try it out, see how it works. But that's one show. I only have one show this year. But I love doing it. I mean, it is an incredible feeling to take music around the world. And that's the crazy thing, right? Is that we could be in China, we could be in Malaysia, we could be in Australia, New Zealand. We've played everywhere. We've played the Middle East, from Doha, Qatar to Dubai in the UAE. We've played Brazil, Chile, Argentina, and Peru. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world. When that music is played, people know it. They recognize it. They're passionate about it. It brings tears to their eyes. And so, I'm nothing but a portal to pass this greatness, this music that all the folks that I know and love and my work, compadres that they've created. And for me, it's such a huge honor to be able to take all of that, present it in my own way, and then be the conduit to people around the world who are love and passionate about this stuff as I am. And it's the greatest feeling in the world. And then people are paying me to do this. Are you kidding me? I'd do it for free. I don't tell anyone that. But yeah, it's what I love to do,
You talked about the music, like reaching out to the people and touching them around the world. And you talked earlier about, the Bill Conti soundtracks and the John Williams soundtracks touching you. When it comes to like going out and getting that first record that you've bought with your own money, I always find it fascinating to find out, like, it's one thing to to get an album, whether it was vinyl or cassette at the time, given to you by a family member for a
your
birthday.
Mom's 8 tracks,
exactly. But to actually take your own, like, whether it was your allowance or paper route, or to actually go out and buy that first album, do you remember which one that was?
100%. And I might get teary-eyed talking about it, but for me it was I had heard it over my friend's house. He had got it, or his mom got it, or whatever, and we sat down and we heard it in the record player, and I was just moved to tears at the time. And again, it came out in 78, so I would have been 10 years old. It was Van Halen's first album, and it was just magical to me. What Eddie Van Halen did and brought to my life is, you can't compare it to any. And again, you're talking to the cousin of Steven Tyler, right? And Steven has brought me so much in my life in regards to looking up to somebody, in regards to giving me the confidence to go after my own dreams. He's an incredible human being, one of my favorite people on the planet. From a musical standpoint, musically, on guitar, nothing compares to what, he touched my heart like in a second. He touched my brain. He changed my life. And so that was the one for me. And I remember, because I was a big Spider-Man comic, guy. I would always get the latest comic book, Spider-Man. And that week, I remember it must have came out. I don't know when the album came out, the exact day. I'm sure I could look it up on Wikipedia or whatever. But I just remember it was snowing when I got mine, because I remember working all weekend. I'm like, oh God, the new Spider-Man book was coming out. And I used to ride my little Huffy bike down about a mile in the snow in Massachusetts, which was a big deal when you're 10, to ride a mile away from your home in the sleet with no gloves. And And so I'm like, you know what? I have to get this album. And so I remember just working all weekend, shoveling people's driveways, which I kind of hated doing, but it was a means to get money back then. Right. So I froze my ass off and worked all weekend just so I could get that Van Halen album. And still, if I had enough left over, I could get, and I think the comics were 75 cents at that point, somewhere around there. And the albums were like, not even $10, $6 or something. So maybe they were $10. But I got the record. I still, what the hell is it? I still have the exact album. I have it hanging up. That was the one for me. How about you?
I distinctly, there were a couple of different albums there, but I distinctly remember going out, and it's funny you mentioned Rocky. It was the Rocky IV soundtrack.
Oh,
there were some great songs on that.
There's no easy way out.
Right?
There's no shortcut home. That was
between that song,
Robert Tepper.
And
how many people remember that name?
And the Vince DiCola sound, like the instrumentals on that. And I think the fact that because Vince DiCola also did the soundtrack to Transformers the movie, like I'll admit, I was a Transformers kid growing up, and just that keyboard tone. To have it in both,
right? Bing! Are you kidding me? Vince DiCola is a buddy of mine. He came over he was over my house. I was having a picnic, a barbecue at my place. And I had Vince came over because we had a mutual friend. I'm like, are you Vince DiCola? And I'm here fanboying out. And it was so funny. It was a weird day because Queensryche was at my house, Vince DiCola, and from Rocky IV, and then who else? Nolan Bushnell, the creator of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, and it was just these are the kinds of parties I throw. This is how I roll. And it was so funny because and I have a piano in my house, and the Queensryche guy gets on the piano, and the drummer from Queensryche is I'm getting them bringing out percussive instruments, and we're all doing this big jam, and Vince DiCola is on piano, and Scott, who's the Queensryche drummers, on drums, and oh man, and we're playing blues and Elvis rock and roll 50s songs and Van Halen covers and Simon and Garfunkel. It was epic.
The fact that you mentioned Queensryche, Queensryche to me has always been one of my favorite bands. I was
Lucidity,
right? But for me, I was always one of those kids who would listen to, especially live albums, trying to go to sleep. And their Operation Live Crime album to me was just one of those ones that was just on repeat all the time.
And Jeff Tate, who's a great guy. I mean, I've been backstage to their shows. This is a different story, but I had a birthday party. I forget which one it was. It was in my early 30s. So it was about 20 years ago, but I rented an arcade and bowling alley at Universal Universal Studios. There's a Rock a Bowl or whatever it was called, and I rented the whole place out. And again, I had everyone, Dweezil Zappa, the Zappa family was there, singers, songwriters, just famous people, actors, all this stuff. And again, crazily enough, Queensryche, and I didn't even know this, Queensryche is playing at the Universal Amphitheater. They were playing that night, and they had Dream Theater was opening for them.
I remember that tour.
And so, and again, I forget, somebody must have said something like, Tommy, did you know, because they were coming into the party, and they say, Tommy, did you realize Queensryche is what? And my buddy Rich, who loved Queensryche, he's like there, dude, Queensryche, I didn't even, what? And he knew Scott as well, because he met him at my barbecue, the drummer. He's like, dude, I'm gonna like call Scott right now and this and that. I'm like, yeah, tell him like we're here and stuff. And this was in the afternoon, because the party went all day long. When I do a party, it's not like, oh, come in for 3 hours and hang out. No, we start at like 11 in the morning and rock that shit till like 3 a.m. And so it was like around like 3 in the afternoon, and who comes rolling into the party? Queensryche, full regalia, boom. And happy birthday. What the hell? It was so cool. And I was the coolest kid on the block that day, when it's like, what, we just come to your birthday party and Queensryche just randomly shows up. It's like, yeah, that's how I roll. And then we went to the show afterwards, and then came back to the party. So it was a very strange, epic day.
And with Dream Theater,
but his voice is like operatic.
Oh, and the fact that he's still putting out good music. He did the Sweet Oblivion album. It was like a year or two ago. And
well, I mean, you look at him, you look at Steven Tyler, who's been rocking and rolling hardcore, by the way, for 50 plus years. And his voice is still epic. And the other one I'd throw into that as well, because again, you look at folks like Robert Plant and David Lee Roth, who I love, but their voices changed. Let's be honest. You know, Steve Perry from Journey, who I love, but their voices are different. Fair enough. You know, you get older, voices are muscles. You know, you start to lose that. But then you look at Jeff Tate from Queensryche, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and then I'll throw out the third one here, who's just as epic today as he was 30, 40 years ago, Sammy Hagar. I think
wow, yes.
He still has it, and he can still hit those high notes. And there's growling, screaming high notes too. They're not like,
for such a powerhouse vocalist to still be able to carry that through to like Chickenfoot and all the other projects with the Circle.
So great. So great. I was so happy. Again, I cried for about 3 days when Eddie Van Halen passed away last fall. And I was broken up, and I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was in the car last week, and what came on? Oh gosh, what song was it? One? Oh, Love Walks In. Bun, na, 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 bun, and that piano started, and I lost it. I started crying, because it was just, that was the poster I had on my wall, and it was. I felt like a part of my childhood died when he passed away, you know, and he was I've met so many people. I've worked with so many people, Steve Vai, I've met Sammy Hagar, the Motley Crue guys are buddies of mine. And he was one person I never met. I was backstage at a couple of, because I'm friends with Vince Neil, and Vince Neil opened for Van Halen on one of their tours with Sammy. And I didn't want to bug him though. You know, like he was backstage and he's getting ready, and I'm like, I don't want to just walk up to him. Hey, Eddie, I'm your biggest fan. I'm like, I want to be introduced to him. Like, I want to be, you know, like properly, like I was to Vince Neil and Steve Vai and all these, you know, greats. And I don't regret it. I don't regret not going up to him. I don't kick myself over it, but I'm like, oh man, I never got a chance to, you know, to just whatever. I mean, I own some of his stuff. You know, I have many of Eddie's stage used guitar picks and things like that I've purchased over the years. But yeah, I just never got a chance to work with him. But do you find yourself, you know, being such a Van Halen fan, how that kind of influences, you know, the direction of the instruments that you play? Like, do you play 100%. The EVH? 100%. Yeah, the pedals, the strings, I don't have you know, the Music Man. You know, I'm more of a, you know, and it's a great tone. I mean, and they're beautiful. The wood and the the paint on them and the stain on like the purples and the blues and the just beautiful guitars. But I don't own those. I have like replicas of his, you know, the Frankenstrat and the 5150 and you know, in fact, I have one hanging in my office in Intellivision. But the tone, oh gosh, are you kidding me? For sure. I mean, I think anyone with a heartbeat would love to, and with software now, like I use a guitar rig on stage. It's called a Fractal. Actually, Steve Vai was the one who turned me on to it because we were talking about it. Or was it? Yeah, it was Steve Vai. It was me, Steve. I'm name dropping now, but it's the story. I'm just telling you the story. It was me, Steve Vai, and Dweezil Zappa. And we were sitting in Frank Zappa's studio and home where Eddie Van Halen sat as a young man because he idolized Frank. And so Dweezil Zappa plays Eruption like just as good as Eddie did. That's how Dweezil Zappa learned how to play guitar. He was given lessons by Eddie Van Halen and Steve Vai. How's that for, you know, Dweezil's amazing. And Dweezil's stories about Eddie are just mind blowing. And again, I have certain things that I won't even mention or talk about publicly just because of the, you know, the nature of how I got them. But I have recordings that the world has never heard. There's a handful of people who've heard some of the recordings that I have of Eddie Van Halen. It's just amazing. And again, I'll never share them or this and that because they were given to me as, you can never share this, but we know how much you love Eddie. And so anyway, but yeah, the Fractal is incredible. And so it you know, it has, you know, it's like, oh yeah, this is the Van Halen tone, you know, it's really great. So you can replicate it in software now, which is pretty amazing technology.
So we've come
with
to the
tubes,
right? It's got to be tubes.
Need both.
So we've come to the point of the podcast where we get to you. And here's the question. If you were to introduce yourself to a stranger, but without using words, you basically put a mixtape together. You hand the tape over and say, these songs, this is the story of me.
Yes.
What's on that tape and why are those songs there?
Yeah. So it's Beethoven's Ninth Ode to Joy. It's the theme from Rocky. And it's, let me pick a good one. Everybody Wants Some from Van Halen. You know, that boom, 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 boom. You know, that's pretty powerful stuff. Or Unchained. Unchained is another great one. Unchained. I'll go with Unchained maybe. That's and I would also put on there, I'd also have to put on there Rock and Roll Band from Boston. I would put on Don't Stop Believing from Journey. Are you starting to see a theme here? Right? Ode to Joy, Unchained, Don't Stop Believing, Rocky theme, inspirational, positive, unrelenting, play it by ear, you know. Oh gosh, Kashmir from Led Zeppelin I'd have to put on there. Melodic, themed, and then just because it's a part of who I am, you know, I'd probably put on a tune from Earthworm Jim as well. One of my own.
Tommy, thank you so much for this. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Where can our listeners find you on social media, and when can we get our hands on the Intellivision Amico?
Yeah, the Intellivision Amico is coming 10/10/2021. 2021. So October 10th this fall, but you can pre-order it now. You can go to our website, Intellivision.com. For me, check out Tallarico.com. It's my last name, Tallarico. And if you go to the bottom of that page, it literally has every way to get a hold of me, from LinkedIn to Twitter to Facebook. And I'm on all of it, Instagram. And I try to, talk to as many folks as I can with the time I have. I try to dedicate like an hour a day to jumping on all the different platforms and just interacting with folks. I find it fun. I find it grounding. I find it entertaining a lot of times. So that I'd say go to Tallarico.com. And then, everything kind of is from there. And it has all my music there and my bio and all the video games I've worked on and all the TV shows I've been on and my shows and all sorts of stuff. So that's the, I'd say that's, and pictures with lots of cool people. Go to the photos section and check out some of the crazy people I've met over my life.
Tommy, thanks so much for this. This has been the Made You a Mixtape podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can listen to us on all audio streaming services. If you're listening to us on one of those, you can actually watch this interview on our YouTube channel. Thanks again. We will see you next week.